Welcome to the Mini Book Podcast on YouTube. We would really appreciate it if you took just a minute to like and subscribe. As a result, we'll be able to continually give you up-to-date book insights and relevant discussions like this one. Okay, let's get to it. Let's get to the Mini Book Podcast on YouTube. Today, we are immersing ourselves into excerpts from Michael Benessi's Touch Matters, Handshakes, Hugs, and the new science on how touch can enhance your well-being. So this deep dive, it's really going to explore the surprising, significance of touch in your life. And we're drawing from research done during the COVID-19 pandemic, but also beyond that. Our mission here is, it's to unpack the often underestimated power of your tactile sense, right from your earliest development through to social interactions and your overall well-being.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, I think, is how something like the pandemic, with all the restrictions on physical contact, well, it suddenly put this huge spotlight on a sense we usually just take for granted. The author, Benessi, he's a touch researcher himself, and he talks about this experience. It really, it sets the scene perfectly for why this topic feels so relevant right now, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And the amount of research that came out of that time is just, incredible. Benessi mentions the Global Touch Test study. They launched it right as the pandemic was really taking hold. And they gathered data from, nearly 40,000 people across 112 countries. That's massive.
It really is. And that data, it gave us this unique window into what touch actually meant to people right when they couldn't have it.
Exactly. The crucial insight there, I think, is just how vital it is. Fundamentally vital.
For sure. The timing. I mean, initially you might think, oh, bad timing for a touch study, right? But it turned out to be incredibly insightful. We got all these raw, sort of unfiltered accounts of people really longing for touch during lockdowns. And then just the pure joy of those first hugs afterwards.
Yeah.
And those stories, plus the hard data, they just hammered home this basic human need for connection through touch. Makes you think about, the very foundation of how we interact.
It really does. And it makes you think about something maybe you don't consciously consider often, which is that touch is actually our first sense, the very first one to develop.
Right.
Benessi points out, even as a fetus, we're already exploring by touch, reaching out, touching the uterus wall. It's like this primal thing.
Yeah, this initial connection to the world.
So the key takeaway is really that our relationship with touch starts way before we're even born.
Exactly. And you'd think, starting so early, we'd all be experts, right? But the book really highlights how it gets, surprisingly complicated as we get older. Pandemics, obviously, but also social rules, our past experiences, and just the fact that different people interpret touch so differently. All that stuff makes it really complex in adulthood.
Yeah, it does raise that question, like, why does something so basic become so, nuanced? And Benessi shares a really nice personal story, actually, about his younger sister joining the family when he was a teenager, just as a positive example of that developmental touch.
Yeah.
It kind of grounds the science in a very human way, I think.
It does, brings it to life. And building on that, the book gets into the fascinating biology of it all, like things called CT fiber.
Right.
They're found in our hairy skin, which is most of our skin, actually. And what's crucial to understand is that these fibers, they're specifically tuned into gentle stroking touch, often at speeds that kind of mirror a mother's heartbeat. So the key point is, our bodies seem specifically wired for that kind of gentle, caring touch. Suggests a real biological basis for our need for connection.
That's such a beautiful biological link, isn't it? And the research he talks about really shows the power of this gentle touch. Like, there was a study in 2018 found that gentle stroking before a painful procedure, like a heel prick for a newborn, it actually reduced the pain-related brain activity.
Yeah, that's profound.
It is. What really stands out to you about findings like that?
Well, it just completely contradicts any idea that touch is just, superficial. It has this tangible effect on how the brain processes something as basic as pain, especially when we're most vulnerable. And the benefits go beyond just pain. Throughout childhood, supportive touch from caregivers, and it's not just stroking, but, hugs when a kid's upset, that kind of thing. It's linked to more social behavior, more empathy later on. There's research from Notre Dame that supports this.
And it gets even more fundamental, doesn't it? Like, research showing that the very first touch sensations can have these really long-lasting effects on social development. Benessi mentions a study where infants who got more touch from their mothers right after birth, they showed more coordinated social behaviors later. It's like early touch helps them get in sync socially.
Yeah, exactly. So What does this all mean for how we think about early caregiving?
Well, it suggests that giving lots of nurturing touch in infancy isn't just about comfort, right? It's like
Mm.
laying down this crucial foundation for social skills later in life.
Definitely. And this early caregiving touch, things like massage, skin-to-skin contact, it also has these really significant physiological benefits for newborns.
Mm.
Studies show increased weight gain, earlier hospital release for premature babies who get this kind of care.
And this is where it gets really sort of groundbreaking. Benisi brings in epigenetics,
Right.
suggesting that caregiving touch might actually trigger epigenetic protection for brain development, which could then impact things like immune function, metabolic function. That's touch literally influencing how our genes get expressed. It really makes you wonder about the long-term impact, doesn't it?
It absolutely highlights the holistic impact of early touch. It affects everything: sleep, feeding, stress responses, social stuff, even our genetics, potentially. And this understanding, it's fueled important initiatives. Things like No Baby Unhugged or the UNICEF baby-friendly standards that promote skin-to-skin.
Yeah.
If you connect that to the bigger picture, it just underscores how important it is for society to support these nurturing environments for babies.
And it's not just the babies benefiting either. The book shares findings that kangaroo care, that skin-to-skin holding it, actually reduces postpartum depression symptoms in mums.
Oh, interesting.
And lowers anxiety and depression in new dads, too. Plus, for the newborns, it means less crying, earlier feeding, more stable heart rates, temperature. It's just a win-win all around.
That's fantastic. So what are the main takeaways for new parents from all this?
I think the big message is just the profound mutual benefit of skin to skin. It's not just for the baby's health. It really supports the parents' emotional and physiological adjustment, too.
Right. And to help caregivers navigate this, the book sums up these 5 principles for healthy touch with kids. Things like reflect on your own experiences, ask and respect their preferences, learn about healthy touch, go slow, don't assume more is always better, and crucially, model respect for body boundaries. It gives a kind of practical framework.
That sounds really useful. Okay, so moving beyond development, Benisi takes us into his lab. Sounds pretty high-tech, actually.
Gizmos and gadgets.
But really, their focus is on something deeply human. Understanding pleasant touch. What's the sort of central question they're trying to answer?
Well, a key thing is the difference between glabrous skin that's not hairy, like your palms, and the hairy skin that covers most of us. Because it's in that hairy skin where those CT fibers we mentioned are found. Discovering them, first in cats, then humans, that was huge. It really changed how we think about skin as a sensory organ.
It's a good reminder, too, that how pleasant touch feels isn't just about, which receptors are firing.
Definitely not.
Like Benisi points out, the context matters hugely. Past experiences, even what you expect to feel. A partner's touch might feel amazing 1 minute,
Yeah.
but maybe less so if you're stressed about work or something. So it's not just the physical sensation itself, is it?
Not at all. And those CT fibers, they're just one piece of this really complex network in our skin. We've got receptors for pressure, temperature, vibration, even itch.
Right.
And all this information gets processed up in the brain. And a key player is the insula.
The insula, okay.
Yeah, think of it as like your body's internal awareness hub. And the fact that it's involved in pleasant touch really highlights how deeply our physical sensations are tangled up with our emotions and our sense of well-being.
So the insula sounds like it's doing a lot, regulating the nervous system, processing emotions, making us aware of body signals like hunger or temperature.
Exactly.
And also involved in pleasant touch. So it's a critical link between physical feeling and emotional state.
That's a great way to put it. And when we feel pleasant touch, it can trigger the release of these powerful chemicals,
Oh, sorry.
like oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and dopamine, serotonin, which contribute to pleasure, well-being, reducing stress, fostering connection. There's this direct biological pathway from a simple touch to these really profound emotional and social effects.
It's wild how our instincts seem to line up with this biology, too. Like Benisi mentions, adults tend to naturally stroke partners and friends at those perfect CT fiber speeds.
Yeah.
But interestingly, they speed up with strangers, which hints at these sort of unwritten social rules being involved.
That shift in speed is fascinating, isn't it? It really underlines the social side of touch. We seem to intuitively adjust based on intimacy, social context, maybe signaling boundaries or unfamiliarity. The book also mentions how often we touch our own faces, like over 50 times an hour on average.
Really? I had no idea it was that much.
Yeah, but the sensation is often dampened because our brain kind of predicts the outcome of our own touch.
Ah, that makes sense. and like not being able to tickle yourself properly. Benisi mentions the two types of tickling and why we can't do it to ourselves, another quirky tactile thing.
Yeah, probably related to needing to be sensitive to unexpected external things, right? If we could easily tickle ourselves, maybe it would interfere with detecting actual threats or social cues.
Good point. And self-touch isn't just absent-minded either. Research suggests it can be a way we manage stress or anxiety.
Mm-hmm. And the book introduces interoception to our awareness of internal body states and connects it to mental health and social connections.
Okay, so summing up the neuroscience bit, we've got the somatosensory cortex figuring out where and how much touch,
Right.
the anterior cingulate cortex adding the emotional layer,
Uh-huh.
and the insula dealing with internal signals, pleasantness, hormones. It's this really complex, interconnected system.
Yeah, the main thing is that touch is not simple.
Ah,
It's deeply woven into our emotional, social, physiological systems. It's this sophisticated network working together.
it really is. And that complex wiring underpins the power of even simple things like a hug. Banny shares that great story of Juan Mon and the Free Hugs campaign. Such a powerful example of that need for connection.
Oh yeah, that image of someone just standing there with a free hug sign,
Yeah.
it really strikes a chord. And there's a 2022 study finding people hug, on average, about 6 times a day. More on weekends, apparently.
Huh. Makes you think about all the different types of hugs, doesn't it? Like the full bear hug versus the quick, polite one. Do different hugs give different benefits, do you think?
Well, anecdotally, people definitely describe different feelings.
Yeah.
A tight bear hug might feel really comforting, secure, while a brief one is more maybe social acknowledgement. And it's funny, the book even links reading, especially books, to health and longevity. So maybe just learning about hugs here is good for us.
Hmm. Well, that's good news for you listening. But back to hugs themselves. Research suggests they can act as a buffer against daily stress, like arguments, possibly because of that oxytocin connection we talked about.
Yeah, more hugs, potentially less stress. Sounds good.
So what's the key mechanism there? How do hugs actually reduce stress?
Well, the oxytocin release triggered by pleasant touch, like hugging, that's thought to be a big part of it. Oxytocin can reduce cortisol, the stress hormone, and promote feelings of calm, connection.
Right. And that Carnegie Mellon study from 2015 is pretty striking. More frequent hugging was linked to being less likely to get cold symptoms even after being exposed to the virus.
Yeah. Though it's important they noted that perceived social support seemed to be a key factor there, too. It wasn't just the hug itself, maybe.
Okay. And the benefits might go even deeper. Another study linked more daily hugging to lower levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which suggests a potential link to reduced chronic inflammation.
Wow.
It's amazing that something as simple as a hug could have these physiological effects. Makes you wonder about the long-term health impact of regular hugging.
It really does.
Yeah.
But, and this is a crucial caveat Benisi mentions, a lot of this hug research is done on weird populations.
Weird.
Yeah, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies. So we do need to be a bit careful about generalizing these findings everywhere.
That's a really important point. So hugs are powerful, clearly. But what about other beneficial types of touch? Holding hands, for example. Benisi talks about research showing it can reduce the stress response in threatening situations. But again, the meaning of the touch and the relationship really matter.
Yeah, that feeling of connection, of support from the other person, that seems key. The physical act signals safety, reassurance, which can then dial down the physiological stress response.
Absolutely. That 2001 study where holding hands with a researcher reduced anxiety in surgical patients measured by epinephrine levels, that's a powerful illustration.
And it's fascinating. It's not just humans. Research on surgeonfish showed tactile stimulation lowered their stress too.
It really seems like touch has this fundamental stress-reducing power across species. Though the book does note a lack of strong evidence for therapeutic touch, specifically for anxiety disorders. Needs more research there.
Yeah, the main issue there is designing studies that can really isolate the effects of the touch itself from things like the practitioner's presence or the patient's own expectations. It's tricky.
Okay. And then there's massage therapy. That has been studied a lot.
Definitely.
Benefits seem numerous. Lower cortisol, heart rate, blood pressure, increased oxytocin. Olivia's story in the book about the emotional release people can get during massage is quite something.
It really underscores that deep link between touch and emotional well-being.
Yeah. And the study comparing massage to just simple touch in cancer patients. It found that while both helped, massage led to bigger improvements in pain and mood. Suggests it's maybe more potent.
It could be. The deeper pressure, the manipulation of tissues in massage that likely stimulates different nerves, has a bigger effect on muscle relaxation, circulation, which could lead to greater relief.
So it seems like hand-holding is maybe particularly good for stress and anxiety,
hmm
while massage offers this broader range of benefits for physical and emotional well-being. It's all part of this complex picture of how touch affects us.
Right. Now, on the flip side, Benessi gets into what happens when we don't get enough touch deprivation, touch hunger. He even mentions Harlow's monkey experiments. Historical evidence, however difficult, of how vital touch is for social connection.
Yeah, those early experiments, though ethically problematic now, really showed that need for contact comfort, didn't they? The baby monkeys preferring the soft cloth mother over the wire one with food.
Exactly. And the book also mentions Prescott's cross-cultural research, which suggested a link between high physical affection in infancy and low adult violence, though, again, methodological issues there.
And Tiffany Field's study comparing French and American teens, less touch, more aggression in the Americans, hinted at something similar. But yeah, correlation isn't causation. So many cultural factors could be involved.
Absolutely. Cultural norms, parenting styles, socioeconomic factors, loads of things could play into those differences.
For sure. But the pandemic really brought this idea of touch hunger into sharp focus for many people.
Definitely.
As restrictions limited contact, that longing for touch went up, and it was linked to more loneliness, more anxiety. Studies by Meijer and others showed that.
So what were the psychological effects of all that widespread touch deprivation?
Well, it seems our individual attachment styles really influenced how we experienced it. Amonisi uses characters from shows like Gilmore Girls and Scott Pilgrim to illustrate avoidant and anxious styles.
Ah,
And how these affected people's sensitivity to less touch during the pandemic. How did those styles shape the experience?
well, people with anxious attachment styles seemed more sensitive to the lack of touch, felt more distress, more longing, whereas those with avoidant styles reported less desire for intimate touch, maybe felt less affected by it all.
Which really just highlights, again, that touch preferences are so personal. There's no one-size-fits-all.
Exactly. And the book points out vulnerable groups, too, more prone to touch hunger people living alone, older adults, those in care homes. It makes you think about finding ways to connect with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are the sort of ethical considerations around providing touch for those groups?
Well, it really stresses the importance of consent, respecting boundaries, making sure any touch is appropriate and genuinely beneficial for that specific person.
Right. And the pandemic did spark some creative solutions for touch hunger, didn't it? Virtual cuddle therapy,
Yeah.
tranquility chairs, calming cushions, mimicking breathing, even just stroking pets, which we know can lower blood pressure and cortisol.
And Vera's sensory exercises with stones and things, low tech, but potentially effective.
It's fascinating how people adapted. Benesi sums up 5 practical ways to address touch hunger. Schedule hugs, ask for touch, mindful self-touch, stroke pets, explore textures. Simple things, but maybe powerful.
Yeah, likely depends on the person which works best. For some, seeking out consensual touch might be key. For others, self-touch or pet companionship might be enough.
Okay, shifting into tactile intimacy now. The book references Jerry Maguire kissing as a gift.
Hi.
It talks about different kinds of kissing and how, surprisingly, romantic sexual kissing isn't actually universal across all cultures.
That is an eye-opener. And while kissing feels great, Benessi does mention the biology exchanging bacteria, saliva, potential health risks like increased meningitis risk in teens. A reminder of the biological side.
It is. The book looks at possible origins, maybe linked to babies liking lip touching, association with feeding, and highlights how packed with touch receptors our lips are. That explains the pleasure.
Right. What's the sort of evolutionary advantage of that pleasure, do you think?
Well, and romantic kissing rarely happens alone, does it? It's usually with hugging, hand-holding, enhancing the whole tactile thing. Research shows both men and women rate lip kissing as highly romantic, more intimate than other affectionate touches, which fits with how we generally think about intimacy.
And apparently being a good kisser has social advantages. Studies suggest they're rated as more attractive, more desirable for dates, casual sex, even long-term partners. Seems kissing plays a big role in mate selection.
Wow, quite the reason to practice. The book also explores possible gender differences. Maybe men value kissing more for initial assessment, women more for relationship maintenance. Are those differences seen everywhere?
Research suggests some cultural variation, but those general trends pop up in several studies. And scent might play a role too, MHC genes related to immunity. Kissing could help us unconsciously pick up on those cues.
Interesting. And then the book naturally moves to the link between touch and the broader sexual experience. Foreplay, touching intimate and non-intimate areas during sex.
Yeah, the neuroscience of sexual touch and orgasm sounds incredibly complex. Brainstem activation, the hypogastric nerve, huge areas of the brain lighting up. Benissi mentions Komisaruk and Whipple's pioneering brain mapping work here.
What's one of the most surprising findings from that research?
Just the sheer extent of brain activity during orgasm is not just localized. It's like a whole brain event.
Wow. And it involves this cascade of hormones, neurotransmitters, dopamine, testosterone, or adrenaline changes in the limbic system, prefrontal cortex.
Right. And importantly, research shows that affection facilitated through sex, including hugging and kissing, benefits well-being throughout adulthood.
So it reinforces that idea that intimacy isn't just the physical act, but the emotional connection built through touch.
Exactly. Benissi stresses open communication about tactile intimacy and shares Tracy Cox's phrase, make affection, not love.
What's the core message there?
Basically, broaden our idea of intimacy beyond just intercourse. Recognize how important other affectionate touches, cuddling, kissing, holding hands are for maintaining connection and well-being.
Makes sense. And the book offers 4 practical tips for enhancing tactile intimacy. Be mindful, communicate openly, appreciate different kinds of affection, and actively invite affection. Good starting points.
Definitely. Now, acknowledging we all experience touch differently, Benissi includes a little touch preferences quiz just to get you thinking. It highlights how someone might love touch from friends but hate it from strangers. Why is knowing your own preferences so important?
Well, knowing them lets you communicate your needs and boundaries better in relationships, right? Leads to more satisfying, comfortable interaction.
Which leads into the touch personas idea. Charlie the toucher, Taylor the non-toucher, just illustrating that wide spectrum of approaches. Interestingly, there's not much science on how different personas actually interact.
And attachment styles, as we mentioned, really influence touch preferences too. Benissi uses the Scott Pilgrim characters again to show how avoidant or anxious styles might play out.
Yeah, how might an avoidant person's experience differ from an anxious one?
Well, someone avoidant might feel overwhelmed by close physical touch, maybe pull back, whereas someone anxious might crave more frequent, reassuring touch to feel secure.
And research even shows attachment style can affect the pain-reducing effects of pleasant touch. It really underlines how personal our tactile world is.
Absolutely. Aligning the quality of touch with what someone actually desires seems key for relationship satisfaction.
Right. The book also touches on potential links between the big 5 personality traits and touch, like extroversion often linked with more positive feelings about touch. Any surprising links there?
Well, some studies suggest people high in agreeableness also tend to be more comfortable with touch. And crucially, we need to consider neurodiversity. Many autistic individuals experience touch very differently. Sometimes heightened sensitivity, sometimes reduced. The book also mentions synesthesia, like mirror touch synesthesia, and ASMR, those touch-like sensations from sound or visuals.
It's such a powerful reminder that scientific findings often show the average, but individual variations are huge and need respect. How can we be more mindful of those differences?
I think the key is being observant, communicating, respecting boundaries, asking about preferences, watching nonverbal cues. That goes a long way.
Okay, shifting gears again. Benissi looks at cultural and contextual variations. He revisits that classic 1966 study by Sidney Girard, The Coffee Shop Observation.
Oh, yeah.
The massive difference in touch frequency between places like San Juan and London. Benissi himself says he was surprised by those findings.
It's still so striking, and even a more recent study comparing UK and Japanese adults found similarities in how closeness relates to acceptable touch zones, but also subtle differences in how pleasant or acceptable touch felt.
So what do these cross-cultural studies tell us? Is touch universal or not?
Well, they suggest the need for connection through touch might be universal, but the specific ways it's expressed, received, deemed appropriate, those are heavily shaped by culture and context.
Right. The relationship between culture, acceptability, touch preferences, it's complex. Some basics hold, but significant differences exist.
And the pandemic really made us all hyper-aware of personal space norms too, didn't it?
Definitely. And personal space preferences vary cross-culturally.
Yeah.
People from warmer climates often prefer closer distances, even with strangers.
The book even explores a potential link between temperature, trust, and how we interact. What's the theory there?
One idea is that in warmer climates, maybe closer proximity is just more common, less associated with threat because people interact more in shared outdoor spaces. Just a theory?
Interesting. Understanding these nuances is vital for communication. Dewan's tips in the book are practical. Talk about differences, state your preferences, be adaptable, don't assume others feel the same way you do.
Good advice. Okay, finally, Benisi looks at social touch in action. Sports, service, persuasion, like the research on NBA teams. More early season touch linked to better cooperation and performance later. Fascinating link between physical interaction and team success.
It's a powerful example of how touch can build team cohesion, trust. And Jurgen Klopp's famous hugging with Liverpool fits with broader research on tactile communication boosting teams.
Yeah, it even extends to touch as a coaching strategy. Athletes reporting benefits from positive coach touch.
And who knew a quick touch from a server could increase tips? The Midas touch effect. Why does that happen?
The thinking is even a fleeting, appropriate touch creates a subtle feeling of connection, positive regard, which might make the customer feel more generous.
Right. Studies in the US and France support it, and research suggests a brief touch from salespeople can increase shopping time, positive evaluations.
Benisi's own story about helping a customer after a touch, and those experiments with bus drivers in France, they really show the persuasive side of touch.
It's amazing how a small gesture can sway behavior. And it's not just human-human. Studies show touch from a robot can increase compliance.
Wow.
But it's complex. One experiment suggested a pat on the back made people less likely to sanitize their hands afterwards. Suggesting touch can convey social norms, too.
Yeah, how can touch do that? Signal social norms.
Well, maybe a pat on the back implies a relaxed, informal setting where strict hygiene feels less critical. Just an idea.
Interesting. And the book mentions in-group, out-group dynamics, attractiveness, how those affect our response to touch. We tend to find touch from attractive strangers more pleasant. The beauty is good stereotype again.
So these brief social touches, they're packed with potential, influencing spending, shaping perceptions, conveying social info, all modulated by individual and social factors. What's the main message about these small touches?
I think the main message is that even brief, seemingly casual touches can have surprisingly big effects on our social interactions. They influence attitudes, behaviors, perceptions in subtle but powerful ways.
Okay. The book then looks at touch in professional and educational settings, acknowledging different views from strict no-touch policies to arguments for appropriate touch helping colleagues, but not much direct research there.
Right. And the examples of abuse of touch in sports are a crucial cautionary note.
Definitely. On a more positive note, research shows we can identify emotions, anger, fear, love, gratitude just through touch alone. That's amazing communication potential.
It really is. And brief touches at work might help express gratitude, maybe improve team performance, or be important when apologizing. But again, individual differences in touch needs have to be considered. How can workplaces handle that?
Good question. The pandemic definitely made us look at handshakes differently for a while. Question as a bioweapon even. But Benisi notes they seem to be making a comeback. It's such an ingrained ritual.
It is. And research from 2008 linked the quality of a handshake, grip, duration, eye contact to job interview success.
Wow. What makes a good handshake, according to that?
Well, things like firmness, duration, vigor, eye contact were all mentioned. And handshakes can influence judgments about confidence, competence, decisions about deals, cooperation.
Experiments suggest they can signal cooperative intent in negotiations, too.
So the science of workplace touch isn't simple. It's this complex balance. Potential benefits for bonding, performance, versus risks of discomfort or inappropriateness. Needs careful individual thought.
Right. Okay, lastly, the future of touch. Digital technological innovations, haptics, things like the Tesla suit giving tactile feedback in VR.
Yeah, opening up possibilities for remote touch, sharing sensations without physical contact. What are some of the most promising uses?
Well, remote training for emergency responders, space agencies, potential ways for people to connect socially across distance, and mid-air ultrasound touch, though, figuring out the emotions conveyed there is tricky.
Touch tech is also used for safety vibrations and steering wheels. Surgical robots use tactile feedback for precision. Bomb disposal robots rely on it too. How is that feedback helping?
It lets operators kind of feel the remote environment, giving crucial info for precision, safety, and hug bots. Research showing people rate robots as more reliable if interactions include touch, opens up possibilities for robot social interaction, wellness support.
And inclusive design, sensory substitution.
Uh,
like David Eagleman's vibrotactile vest conveying sound through vibrations for deaf or hard of hearing people. Amazing ways to bridge sensory gaps.
Yeah. And the growing field of haptic wellness tech wearables, virtual hugs,
Mhm.
suggests a future where tech might enhance tactile experiences and well-being, though ethical questions around virtual touch definitely need discussion.
For sure.
But ultimately, despite all the tech, the book really concludes by stressing the fundamental importance of touch. For comfort, connection, care. Our preferences vary hugely, but understanding those differences, talking more deeply about touch, that can really improve our interactions.
Precisely. It really encourages you to think about your own relationship with touch and just appreciate its profound impact on your life and your relationships.
This has been a really fascinating immersion into the science of touch based on Michael Benessi's Touch Matters. The book itself goes into way more detail, exploring all the nuances of our tactile experiences and their huge impact on our lives. We really encourage you to purchase Touch Matters if you want to explore this vital sense further and get a deeper understanding of just how significant it is. You can find more information in the description below. This is the end of this deep dive. As always, thank you so much for listening, and please subscribe for more insightful explorations.